All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us this afternoon for the Creative Fellowship virtual info session. My name is Luna Goldberg, and I'm the Assistant Director of Education here at the Wolfsonian FIU. So for today, we are going to begin this session by talking briefly about the Wolfsonian. I want to give you background about our institution, followed by more information about the Creative Fellowship, and then we'll move into Q&A. Throughout this session, if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat, and when we move into moderated conversation, we will run through them. So before we begin, I want to offer some context about the fellowship and its origins. So the Wolfsonian Creative Fellowship, it's a relatively new program. This will actually be our fourth cycle. But our fellowship programs in general at the Wolfsonian started in 1995 with the opening of the institution. And since then, we've offered research fellowships and a program that supports projects across academic fields and allows people to do independent research around objects in our collection and our holdings. We've also since then been working with creative artists, visual artists, dancers, musicians, scholars of all sorts on projects, whether they manifest in the form of a program and or an exhibition. And so about 3 years ago, we came together as a cohort on our team and decided to launch a creative fellowship as a way of formalizing a process through which we can create opportunities for artists to do research in the collection and also to propose things that we could do together. So we're now in our fourth cycle, and over time we've been shifting the program. It's grown, we've piloted some things, and I assume it'll continue to be that way through feedback from our fellows. For this year's cycle, we have made a shift, and one of those shifts is that we're focusing specifically on digital media and artists working in the digital realm. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that later on and some of the reasons why we made that decision. So first, to ground us, I wanted to share this image of our building. I'm not sure if you all are local, if you've had the opportunity to visit, but for those of you who aren't familiar with us, this is what our building looks like. It was originally a storage facility many, many years ago and was repurposed and converted into a museum. And so the Wolfsonian in general, we are a museum of art and design, part of Florida International University. So we work oftentimes with faculty, with students, but the community at large. And we have a very strong collection of art and design, specifically focused on the period of 1850 to 1950. The collection holds over 200,000 objects. We are the third largest public university museum in the United States. And I like to describe the collection as one that's pretty quirky in ways. We hold everything from the ordinary to the extraordinaries. In the collection, you can find Picassos. You can also find matchbooks and postcards and posters and toasters. So there's quite a range there. We have a strong focus also on propaganda. And I wanted to share this mission because our mission, and specifically this last line, really speaks to why we started this fellowship. So the Wolfsonian uses objects to illustrate the persuasive power of art and design, to explore what it means to be modern, and to tell the story of political, social, and technological changes that have transformed our world. It encourages people to see the world in new ways and to learn from the past as they shape the present and influence the future. Sure. And so that's what really is at the core of this fellowship. How can artists and makers and creatives draw from the collection to produce new work? What are some questions in the collection that we still have today, and how have things shifted since then? So now more practically, I want to share some of the spaces that our fellows will have access to during their fellowship. And it'll also speak to some of the types of objects that we have. But over here, you can see this is a floor that holds our painting storage. And this floor also now holds our works on paper. So that's a space that our fellows may often work with. We have an off-site storage facility for furniture and small object storage. And so here you can just get a sense of how much there is in the building. And we also have a rare books and special collections library. And oftentimes our founder, Mickey Wolfson, will call this the heart and soul of the Wolfsonian. There are so many objects and things. This is also where we keep a lot of our ephemera. So it's really an incredible space. And these objects, this is where our fellows stay. This is where they have their office space, and those objects can be handled. Now, to give you an idea of the range of objects, here are some slides with some of our collection highlights. And so you'll see we've categorized them through superlatives, but we have everything from Uranian glass to things like this Trilon and Perisphere, which was used to advertise the 1939 New York World's Fair. And this was their marketing at the time. They would put them on top of cars and they toured the country trying to get people to come to World's Fairs. We also have some difficult objects. We have a lot of propaganda, and here we have something a little more satirical. We have this Adolf Hitler pincushion, and so this was made as an anti-Nazi piece, but you would put your pins in his bottom. Some other favorites. So the tallest object that we have is this FDR sculpture. It's about 12 feet tall. And I think we've had it on display once in our double ceiling space, but it doesn't necessarily fit everywhere in the building. The longest object, which actually isn't based here in Miami, is the Litorina. And this is a Fiat rail car that our founder, Mickey Wolfson, actually spent many years traveling on. It was featured in Some Like It Hot in 1959. So if you rewatch that movie, you will see this exact rail car. And it's currently on via the Museum of Transportation in Turkey. And lastly, I always like to talk about the Norris Theater, the Norris Theater facade. It is in our lobby entrance. It's an iconic piece. And actually, you can see behind me, I'm sitting in front of these stained glass windows, which also came from the Norris Theater, which unfortunately was torn down. So we also think about preservation and architecture in our collection. So people often ask me as they're preparing for their applications, how can I find your objects? How can I find out what is in this collection? And a great resource for that is our digital catalog. The digital catalog, it's a work in process. We have about 100,000 or more images at this point in objects that are documented. But it really is a fantastic way to get a feel for whether we have objects and information related to the topic that you're looking to work on. So you can go to this website, digital.wolfsonian.org, and just do a keyword search, or if you're searching for specific artist works or by year, this will pull out information. There's a way of filtering your search as well, depending on what you're looking for. But this is a really fantastic resource to really get a sense of what we have that you might want to look at while you're here. Now, I spoke about our artist collaborations and how we've been collaborating with artists for many years. I want to show you what some of those have looked like, just to give you an idea of the breadth. So here is an image of our facade. You can see it looks a little different. This is a project that we did in 2016 with artist Christy Vanderhoek. And the project was called More is More. It was looking specifically at patterning. But what I really loved about this project is our building is so large and so blank that oftentimes people don't know what the Wolfsonian is. You know, tourists that walk in the neighborhood, of course, we have signage, but the building can be a little bit intimidating. And so this exhibition was a really great way of bringing the outside in, or the inside out, rather, bringing some of the design works that we have in the collection to the exterior facade to also get people past the door and into the space. In 2019, we partnered with a dancer and choreographer based in Miami named Leone Garcia. And he was interested in working on a project called Corporeal Decorum, which has since evolved and had multiple iterations. It was a dance performance looking specifically at Art Deco and architectural features. And so here you can see a few stills from the performance that we had. In 2021, we worked with a Dutch designer named Bas van Beck. And so here you can see our lobby space with some of his installations. His show was called Shameless, and a big part of it was thinking about appropriation. And so he is actually going into the collection, taking images of works, altering them to make them into his own. And so here we see that. And then in 2022, we worked with a ceramicist, Roberto Lugo, on an exhibition called Street Shrines. And this was a really cool one because it was both on the exterior of the building, but also on the interior. And on the exterior, he really wanted to speak to Miami's story. How did this city, how was it built? Who was involved in that? And telling the story of many Caribbean laborers who worked to make Miami what it is today. So here you see these murals on the first floor wrapping the building. And then upstairs, he really did a deep dive in the collection. And what was great was he created this conversation that was almost like a one-to-one, where he was taking the structure of many of the ceramic commemorative plates that we have in the collection and bringing in his own history or underappreciated, undertold stories, narratives that hadn't been brought to the surface, and created his own version. So it was a really lovely conversation between his works and the collection. So lastly, in 2025, we worked with another local artist, Rosemary Chiarlone, on an exhibition called Mapping Trajectories. And here what you see is our bridge tender house. So at the Wilsonian, we have a very peculiar and interesting space called the Bridge Tender House, or the Josephine Baker Pavilion, which you see over here on the left. This was once a working part of the Miami River, and it was an actual bridge tender house that was used when that was no longer being used. They were looking for a home for it. And so it became part of our collection as both an object, but also a space. And today we often will use it for smaller installations of artists. So Rosemary was very interested in the story of this space and its journey from the Miami River to to Miami Beach and the sidewalk in front of the museum. And so here on the right, you can see she has a beautiful artist book that she put together that wove in poetry and some artwork. Now let's move on to the Creative Fellowship. So as I mentioned, in 2023, we launched this fellowship with the intention of supporting creatives. And in that time, we've supported now, I think, six fellows. Yes. So we've supported six fellows since the inception of this program. And it has been quite a range of creatives. We've worked with artists, we've worked with filmmakers, we've worked with designers, technologists, playwrights. Over here, you see L.M. Bogad, and he was working on a screenplay about George Orwell's time fighting in the Spanish Civil War. So he was looking at the collection and specifically looking for archival footage from before, during, and after the war to help give texture and detail to his story. And everyone has a different experience. Oftentimes, we end up having fellows that come in looking for one thing and they find something else. And I think that's just one of the great parts of this collection. The deeper in you are, the more you find. So, looking at this coming cycle, as I mentioned, this year we are specifically interested in applications from artists who are engaging with digital media. And the reason for this is that for the last few years, we've been working with the Knight Foundation to open Knight Labs. And so this will be a space that we're opening in the summer to to create more accessible points of entry to the collection. So there will be a number of digital interactives and spaces to make the broader collection more accessible just because we have so many materials. But part of it will also allow for some commissions. And so our intention is to bring on fellows in this coming cycle who we can later work on, and we'll be opening up proposals once they've gone through that fellowship for commission that can then be on view in our digital Knight Labs. So that was really the reason for the focus this year, and it also opens an opportunity for collaboration past that fellowship period. Now to get to the details of this call. So the deadline for this cycle is on May 31st. We are a little over a month out, and the fellowships typically take around 2 weeks. So during this 2 week period, we invite fellows, we offer them lodging, we have a stipend for artists as well. And during those 2 weeks, they'll be doing research in the collection, working with our team, both from the collections team as well as curatorial and our library team based on what they're looking to work with. So we will facilitate access for them. Research oftentimes is independent, although you have access to our staff. We do have this eligibility requirement that we offer fellowships to US-based artists only. So if you have any questions about eligibility, please reach out. This is mostly logistical because we are part of the university. It is difficult for us to process stipends to international artists. So that's where that eligibility requirement comes from. And the fellowship period, those 2 weeks will take place between August 2026 and April 2027. If you have any questions that are specific that we don't get to on this call, here is the contact information, and you can also find more information on our fellowship page, which we'll look at next. So proposal requirements. For this fellowship, to submit a proposal, this is what we're looking for from you. We are looking for a brief project summary, something short and sweet about what your project is. We are also requesting a CV or resume, one or the other. We ask for a creative proposal, and this is really the meat of the application. So in that proposal, what we want to hear from you is, what are you proposing to look into? What specific objects or areas are you interested in digging into? And how do you see that research contributing to your practice? Now, I do want to emphasize that this fellowship, we are not asking for a product. There is no requirement to create something by the end of those 2 weeks. That would be very ambitious. We're not looking for that at all. For those 2 weeks, we are really looking to facilitate research that you can then go back to your studios and bring into your work. And maybe it takes 6 months, maybe it takes a year, maybe it takes more. That's okay. This is essentially a space for you to get the resources that you need from the collection and also the support of our staff. So in this proposal, we're not looking for a proposal for an exhibition, for some sort of commission. That's not what we're looking for. We just want to dig into what your project is about, what your research is about, how it fits into your personal practice, and how the collection will be of use to you. And then we also have some short responses. So in those short responses, we want to hear about your digital approach. What kind of practice do you have? Do you work with animation? Do you work with a video? Do you work with media? Whatever that is, we want to hear from you about that. And lastly, collection engagement. So that gets a little bit to the same information I was just communicating about the creative proposal. What are those specific objects and areas you want to dig into? Lastly, there is an opportunity to submit multimedia files. So those are, the portfolio link is optional. The media files are not. There are different ways that you can submit, and we do have information on our website about durational works, just because our team will be reviewing and we might not be able to watch a feature film, but we do want to get a sense of your practice. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a minute. I want to take some time to walk you through our application portal and what it looks like, and then we're going to open up for Q&A. Okay, so here we are. Let me actually take us a step back. This is what you will see on our website when you open the Wilsonian homepage. And we actually have a fast link here to get us to the fellowship. Actually, this is our info session, so that's not where we want to go. So if you go to research, you will see a fellowship tab. And over here, there's information about the fellowships more broadly, but what you're going to be looking for is this creative fellowship page. And so a lot of this information is what we've gone over today. If you click here on the additional information sheet, this has more information about the structure of the program, the activities, some additional questions, the digital commission that I mentioned, and also these same details. Now, when we come back, you have this creative fellowship application form, and this is where you'll start your application. Here is also that email that we talked about. So if you have any questions, if you have questions about materials that you're interested in and you just haven't been able to find information through our digital catalog, you can write this email. I am on the other end of it. And I'm happy to let you know if I have additional information or if I think this is a good fit for you and that you should submit an application. And the application form is here. It's very straightforward. We ask for some contact information. And then over here, you'll see the section about the proposal. So here's that project summary that I mentioned. Over here is where we have that short response about collection, engagement. Same with the digital approach. And we will ask you, if selected, what are your two top choices for dates? So we ask that you stay within this period, August 1, 2026 to April 30th, 2027. And then lastly over here, this is where all of your uploads go. So here we have a CV, a slot for your creative proposal, and multimedia files. And you'll notice that when you click on some of these, it will have naming conventions just to facilitate the sorting on our end. If you choose to add an additional link to a website or a media link, if, for instance, your documents are in Google Docs or in a Google folder, this is where you would put the link. I just ask that you make sure it's visible because sometimes those folders get shared and then when we click on those links, we don't have access. So just make sure that if you are using Google Files in any way, that you make them accessible to us. And with that, I think we are ready to go back into Q&A and start that conversation. And so I have my colleague, Sasha Lamadrid, who will be moderating conversation. If more questions come up, please feel free to add them to the chat.
The first question we received is the session being recorded and will it be available to watch through the link or a post you'll provide?
Great, thank you, Sarah. So yes, this session is being recorded and it's going to be trimmed and added to our fellowship page. So the page that we just looked at will have a link to the video and that will be posted throughout the call.
Josh wants to know, how much is the stipend for the fellowship?
Great question. Sorry, I did not mention that. So for this fellowship, we offer different fellowship tiers. Essentially, we have fellows that will come nationally, and so that stipend is $1,500, and that takes into account the travel. If you are based in South Florida and within driving distance, I think we think about Broward County, we think about Miami-Dade County, I forget what the exact mileage is, then you are considered a local fellow. And so the stipend is $1,000 as it doesn't include travel. And we provide lodging for both outside of that stipend. So we have an apartment not too far from the museum that we offer up, and that's available to both local and non-local fellows for that 2-week period. Oh, I think I hit another one of the questions about lodging just then. Sasha, do we have any other questions?
There is a question about, could an aspiring writer apply for this fellowship? And in lieu of multimedia files, what could an aspiring writer upload? And this is by Emma.
Thank you, Emma. That's a great question. Yes, we have had writers apply. What I would encourage you to think about is, with this cycle that has a focus on digital practice, what would that look like? Is there an iteration of something that exists in a digital format. And so that's really the question because of this year's focus around digital. But we have had them apply in the past. You can include a writing sample. I don't know that I have. I don't know that I have set limits on pages, but that is something that I'm happy to think about and add. And that's thank you for bringing that up. That I don't have that just yet.
Liz writes, must the project primarily use Wilsonian collection materials?
So in the research phase, yes, right? Um, the project, the proposal for the fellowship proper and your time here should fully rely on Wilsonian collections material. Our fellowships, they run 2 weeks, and fellows are expected to come in for full days, to be here Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. So it is a very intensive, engaged fellowship program. But if you're asking this question and thinking about the work that's produced as a result of your time here, that does not need to primarily draw from Wilsonian collection materials. Of course, you're going to have other influences, and the intention is for you to create something new that's not only dependent on our materials. So yes and no, depending on how you are posing that question.
Mariana asks, apologies, I connected a bit late and maybe already discussed this, but how can we explore the collection to consider what materials we might be specifically interested in digging into for our work? The link on the website is broken for me, or at least for me, plus it says it is not complete.
Okay, so I'm not sure if you're referencing to the digital catalog, but actually that's something that we should look at together. So let me pull that up just to show you how to search the collection. I think that'll be useful for everyone here. And the digital catalog is really the place to begin to dive into the collection. So hold on here. So here is our digital catalog page. And when you get to this page, this is where you would search. So we'll look at this in a minute. If you come down lower, we often will have these highlights. So for instance, these curated highlights, these are some of the strengths in the collection. They will change over time. We have different ones that tap in. If you click Art Deco, here you'll get a selection of 38 objects that one of our curators likely put together. And this is a nice way to be introduced to the collection. So these are very focused, right? I think there's no more than 40 objects in each of these areas. We have some featured items here. So these are a range of objects in the collection. And then these themes are greater because we have so many materials around World's Fairs or the New Deal, ocean liners. If you click that, I think it'll generate the full search. So you can see that if you search the New Deal, you will come up with 1,564 items. And I'm sure there's more. But this is one of the ways that you can search. Now, if you have a sense of what you're working on, let's say you're doing research about futurism, and I'm going to search futurism here. Let's see what comes up for us. Okay, we have 851 objects. Now we can see some images. In some cases, you can't see the image. Futurism and photography. Those are objects that haven't yet been digitized. So that's the reason for that. When it comes to books, this is the coolest thing. The books, many of them have been digitized, so you can actually flip through and see them online. But if you were doing a deeper search, right? Let's say that I was really interested in DePero and I searched DePero, then it'll pull up specific items by DePero. And you can see it's populating the author field. The other area the other way that you can really target your search is when you have a big search like the last one we did, 851 objects, you can search by genre. So if you know that you're only interested in posters, then you click posters and it'll refine that. So this is a really useful way to access and really dive into the collection. Again, the collection is massive and you're really going to have to work on your keywords to target it and see what you're looking to find. But also it allows for some really great rabbit holes and deep dives. So I hope that was helpful.
We have Julietta asking, if I am a designer and artist who wishes to create physical art pieces that are ultimately meant to be viewed digitally online, such as in an artist-made multimedia online gallery, could this qualify as digital media, meeting the requirements of this year's fellowship, although I'm also creating physical works?
I think so. I think, again, we want to focus on the digital, but that commission aspect doesn't come into play until later. And I mention that because this opportunity, the fellowship aspect, that is a whole experience in and of itself. Once you've had the chance to spend time in the collection and really get to know it, usually that's when people's ideas completely shift. And so in our proposal, we're not looking for that commission idea. That's an opportunity that will open up post fellowship. So post that fellowship, once the fellowship is complete in April 2027, that's when our call will commence for the commission. And by then we will have some more information about the different types of commissions that we can accept. We have a lot of new media that's coming into that space, and one of them is a really massive LED screen. So I know that will be a space that's available. But there are other ways of bringing in commissions into that space. And because it's not complete, there's some knowledge there that we don't yet have. And so that's one of the reasons why we're not looking to get those commission ideas until later on. So I would say, I think so, and I think it's worth submitting an application.
Emma asks, are there restrictions regarding the genre that the aspiring writer may choose?
I don't believe so. I mean, as long as, again, there's inspiration from the collection, right? Previously, when we've worked with writers, like I gave the example of L.M. Bogad and his work around a screenplay on George Orwell's involvement in the Spanish Civil War, he was looking for something really specific. He was looking to find, these details. What kinds of furniture did they have at the time? What are ways that I can really ground this in this period and in this moment? And so that was what he was seeking. So through this proposal, I think I'm less interested in the genre and more interested in what are you seeking from us, right? How is the collection going to support your proposal and your work?
Phosphor asks, are you amicable to artificial intelligence interventions to the collection?
So that is a very timely question because we are living in a moment where AI is taking off. And absolutely, I think, we're intrigued by AI. There's a lot of interest. We had an exhibition up earlier this year with work by Marco Brambilla, who is a filmmaker, and he actually included AI. He had AI intervene in the making of his work. So I would say, yes, absolutely. Let us know. Please write about that component and what that intervention might look like. And I think we would be open to it.
Andrea asks, is an audio component to a digital image considered multimedia enough?
I would say yes. I would say yes. Again, I think, it seems like there's a lot of focus on a product, and I want to emphasize process because this fellowship is not meant to create anything, right? It's really meant to support you in your practice and your work. So I don't want to focus too much on outputs just yet. I think that'll be a different conversation once we've completed this round of fellows and we're looking to commission. But Andrea, I think that's enough of a multimedia aspect for me for you to submit a proposal. Great.
Any other questions?
Any last questions? Is there anything, whether it's about the application process or the fellowship at large? Will this be available to review? Yes, it will. So we will be posting this video recording to our website on the fellowship page.
Are digital versions of the items in the collection available to download during the fellowship?
That's a great question. Essentially, we do have objects that are digitized. On our website, there is not, and on the digital collection catalog, there's not a link. And part of that is because in prior years, we've had issues with people taking our images without citing them and without crediting them. So during the fellowship, and even before and after, there is a process through which to acquire images, and specifically those high-res files. It is on our website. It's a process. It's a pretty straightforward process, especially if you know the accession numbers, because if they're on the digital catalog, then they've already been documented. So that's a relatively simple process. It's more about making sure that people have the right crediting for them. Separately, during the fellowship, you are allowed to take images or scans of whatever materials you're interested in using, because obviously when you want to bring it back to the studio, we want you to have references. So yes.
And where should they go if they have more questions?
So if you have further questions, feel free to email at the Creative Fellowship email address. That is on the fellowship website. I think Sasha just posted it in the group chat. And so that email address is creative@thewolf.fiu.edu. So feel free to reach out if you have any additional questions. I will get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I look forward to receiving your applications.